What is going on, everyone? It's your boy, Miles, with Windows Central Gaming. And today we are joined by the man with the million himself, Mr. Rand al Thor 19. How you doing on this fantastic Saturday, my dude?
What's going on, Miles? What's going on, everybody in chat? We should probably explain how long we've been trying to actually set this up. You trying to get me to come on, and then when I was like, finally, yeah, sure, let's do this, how Xbox let us down.
I know.
About the last 20
minutes.
minutes.
Talk about how beautiful and flawless Xbox apps are in general. So, you know, we just switched to Discord, so there's gonna be a slight change in things for the show. But we were previously on the Xbox app on PC, and there was just no audio from Rand. Nothing changed on my settings. Nothing is different. I just use Discord and it works. Thanks, Xbox. I do love you. You are the best. Simply the best.
Yeah, their PC, their Xbox app on PC needs work.
It really does. It's, you know, it's been a slow, gradual climb to an acceptable state. We're not quite there yet, but I think in 2 to 3 years we'll have an Xbox app that probably works 50% of the time. Oh goodness.
Yeah, so unfortunately, Miles wanted me to play Sea of Thieves, and in fact, I re-downloaded it for him. I spent 40 gigabytes of my data, and I re-downloaded Sea of Thieves, or like 48 gigabytes. And I'm like, all right, ready to go, play Sea of Thieves. I know it has 120 frame rate mode on Series X now. Gonna cruise the sea with Miles as we talk about why Nintendo is irrelevant, why Pokemon is for 12-year-olds, and things like that. And nothing. He couldn't hear me, so I'm not playing Sea of Thieves because now I'm all the way over on my PC, and he's gonna be, you know, cruising the seas by himself.
I'm gonna be sailing solo. It's gonna be ambience at this point. Just get some nice background waves, just to soothe you guys into a nice calm state. But yeah, you know, tried to cater to Rand, make him comfortable, let him play on Xbox, let him use party chat. But apparently Xbox doesn't want it. Xbox is trying to stop this showdown from happening.
You know what you should do? You should make me a mod in chat. That's what you should do.
I could. Sure. $50 and you can be a mod. That's my going rate.
$50.
$50. All right, yeah, I'll work on that. I also need to tweet the show out, so bear with us. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Really appreciate it. Got a pretty awesome show. I'm excited to have Rand on. I've been trying to get him on for a while. Word on the street is he's been scared to come into the Thunderdome with me, so he's been a little dodgy, a little dodgy on the DMs if we're being real. But out of the blue, Rand says, "All right, we got to give the people what they want." And I'm like, this Saturday, boy, it's happening. And sure enough, we're here. We're together. We got 66 peeps in the chat already. Gunstar, Mr. Joanna Dark, Masuko, Xbot Killer.
Yeah, you don't want to shout that guy out.
Is he regular on the Xbox too?
No, it's someone you should probably hide from your channel immediately. That's why I said make me a mod.
Oh no, okay.
Unless you're a mod. Unless you're a mod.
I'm a mod? Yeah.
Then you should do some modding in chat right now.
Let me do some modding. Hold on. Oh my god. Yeah, but we have an awesome show. We're going to be talking about Xbox acquisition rumors because it is rumor season. And we are also going to be talking about the potential of multiple Xbox events in 2021. Got some details on that that'll be interesting. And then obviously the highlight, the grand finale of this show is going to be the Rand al Thor anti-Nintendo intervention. We're going to sit down and we're going to hash out what happened in your life that made you hate Nintendo? We're gonna dive right into that.
What happened in your life to love Nintendo is the better question.
I guess I just had a good upbringing. I had a good family life. You know, all the recipe of just a happy, well balanced childhood. I guess. Call me old fashioned. Call me old fashioned here. But yeah, Rand. Xbox acquisitions are the hotness right now. Everyone has a theory. Everyone's an expert. Everyone's heard from someone that Xbox is buying everyone.
That's true.
We're going to be kind of going through, and I want to play a game, and we'll get into that in just a sec here. Let me just tweet some stuff out here. But I want to play a game where we're gonna pick one dream acquisition.
Dream acquisition.
One either publisher or developer, and we're gonna have. The game is going to be you pick that publisher or developer, and then you assign Xbox Game Studios teams to develop IP. That's going to be the general crux of this game. We'll play that in just a sec here. Jesus. All right, I'm just... Woo! That whole Xbox party chat just really threw me for a loop. Trying to get all caught up on this, but cheese and rice, guys.
I know, even your character on screen's not even moving. What's going on?
I know. And yeah, if you guys are here, smash that like button. Feel free to share it out. Let's get to 10,000 viewers today. We got Rand in the mix, so it's going to be a
You'll be lucky to
show.
get 100. Nobody cares about me.
Oh wow, I care about you, Rand. Okay.
Nobody. No, you don't. You just want me on the show so you can go in on me not liking Pokemon. That's all you want. You know.
You see me in Xbox 2 hanging out, supporting the squad. How dare you?
True.
I don't see Rand al Thor in Xbox Chaturdays supporting the squad.
Well, you want to know why? It's because I'm not up at this time on the weekends.
You're not up.
I've told you that before.
You're not up at the crack of noon.
This was special. I'm up literally for you, Miles, to do this show right now.
I appreciate that, Rand. I appreciate you setting that alarm, getting up, and joining me for Xbox.
Yeah, I actually
Saturdays.
did have to set an alarm for this, otherwise I wouldn't have gotten up.
Well, I do appreciate it. I'm excited to sit down with you. So, for our little acquisition game here, and actually before we dive into that, super chat hype right out the gate from Mr. Joanna Dark, who is kind of the super chat legend, super chat MVP of Xbox Chaturdays. Happy to finally have the two coolest dudes in gaming under one roof. Can't stay for the live show today. Just wanted to say hi. Aw, look at it. You can't even stay for the live show. Still dropping super chats. Give it up for Mr. Joanna Dark, the legend. All right, Rand, you should have mod privileges. Sam Tolbert in the mix. Whoa, what's up? Coworker, Demon Souls expert Sam Tolbert joining us as well. So I'm excited. So Rand, the game. I'll set this up and give you time to think about your acquisitions and kind of frame what this game is going to be. So for me, as you probably heard, Windows Central reported that Xbox is buying Konami. Yeah, well, I guess let's talk about the context for that. There was a rumor earlier this week, some of you probably saw, that Windows Central apparently talked to somebody and gave somebody information that Xbox was buying Konami. So we were sourced in a basically a fake rumor, because that's how slow the news cycle is right now.
Indeed.
So if you,
I was talking to Jez about that.
I know I saw it going around, and I immediately pinged Jez. I'm like, "Yo, what is this, dude? You lying to people?" And he's like, "No, I didn't say anything to anyone." So I guess that's a good sign for us when people are using our name for pseudo credibility with their leaks. But no, I don't think anyone from Windows Central has talked to anyone about any Konami related things. So in that regard, the rumor's bogus. But that being said, it got me thinking about some pretty fun possibilities if that were to be the case. So if Xbox bought Konami doesn't really have a lot of premier studios. So they're not really getting any studios with the deal. It would be IP. So in my game, Xbox buys Konami. Xbox also buys Bloober Team. So in my perfect world, we have...
I know where you're going with this already.
Oh, do you? Picture this, though. Let me set the scene. Remember when God of War 2018 came out and everyone was blown away by that team's ability to transform what the God of War franchise was and could be? Just no one expected God of War to go in that direction and deliver that compelling of a story. Imagine Ninja Theory taking the Castlevania IP and doing something similar. Redefining what Castlevania is, redefining the perspective of Castlevania, and pushing a big, epic, grandiose story in the Castlevania universe. So that's number one for me. Ninja Theory reboots Castlevania in the style of 2018's God of War. Number two, Bloober Team, being the proficient horror enthusiasts that they are, being absolute Silent Hill 2 nerds. That team, like, when I've talked to them, every single person on that team cites Silent Hill 2 as their favorite game of all time. Xbox buying Konami gives Bloober the chance to have a big budget, their first big budget game, because there are legit criticisms with the medium. Sure, absolutely. But it
You
isn't.
didn't like Jez's criticisms during the podcast yesterday.
No, I called Jez smooth brain because it's true. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, it's an independent horror game published by an independent studio. I want to see Bloober get the funding and get the means to make something huge and great. And so I want to see in this fantasy universe, Bloober team take the Silent Hill IP and make something special with it.
Well, in this dream scenario, not only would Xbox have to acquire Konami, but would Xbox also have to acquire Bloober?
Yes.
Or would the Xbox just hire out Bloober for this?
Xbox would own Blue. I mean, that's been a rumor, speculation for a while that Xbox is, at least looking at Bloober team, and they're probably judging the kind of success of the medium as like a metric for, is this a worthy acquisition? Because they announced last year that they're publicly on the market. So there's been a rumor that Xbox could swoop them up. I think it really kind of hinges on the success of the medium. So there is a realistic possibility that Bloober team gets added to the stable, just outside of this hyper fantasy. But in my hyper fantasy, Xbox outright buys Bloober and Xbox outright buys Konami.
And this is your fantasy. Your fantasy of all things that you want is Microsoft to buy Bloober and then Microsoft to buy Konami so they can get the Castlevania IP, the Metal Gear Solid IP, which you haven't even mentioned, as well as the Silent Hill IP. And you want Bloober to do Silent Hill.
Mm-hmm.
Which I understand. The medium very much wears its Silent Hill and early Resident Evil. They're what's the word I'm looking for here? It's like a homage, right? Like they wear their inspirations on their sleeve. And Ninja Theory doing Castlevania is an interesting one. So what's the question to me? Do I agree with you? Is this
What I want from you is I want you to pick your own fantasy acquisition and assign Xbox Game Studios to those IP. That is my question to you. You don't have to agree with me. This is just my fan. Actually, my fantasy is anyone competent buys Konami's IP. Anyone. I don't even
anybody
care. PlayStation, Xbox, anyone. Just get it away.
Well, there's that rumored Silent Hill game that's being made, supposedly. One that may or may not be exclusive to PlayStation 5 because Sony may or may not be involved in it, right?
Yeah, the rumored, what are we on, the 6th or 7th year of this rumor at this point?
Yeah. Well, then the Silent Hill composer just recently did an interview where he said something's going to be revealed this summer, and it's what you've been looking for, leading more speculation to the fire that there is a Silent Hill game in the works and will be eventually revealed. Let's see. My dream acquisition. This is interesting.
I thought it'd be fun. So I want to pick your brain and see where Rand's headspace is. If he was in charge of Xbox and he could make these wild kind of moves.
If I was in charge of Xbox, I would buy Nintendo and just shut them down.
Wow, are we gonna get into this already?
I'm kidding.
We're gonna get into this right here and now. Is that what's up?
I don't know. I personally, when I look at who's available, I think I kind of want WB Games. If I was Phil, and I'm not really sure who on the Xbox side I would kind of like have. Okay, well, now that you own WB and you own some of those superhero games, what could you do with that? But since you asked for an acquisition that I would like, that's the one that kind of stands out to me because I'm a huge fan of Rocksteady.
Okay.
They made some incredible games. I'm also a big fan of Monolith. I'm a big fan of Mortal Kombat. Now, I guess here's where that could come in. You could give the NetherRealm developers the Killer Instinct license and have them make Mortal
Oh.
Kombat versus Killer Instinct.
Yeah, I like that possibility. We've seen a couple of the heads of both of those teams talk about Ed Boon himself being a big fan of that idea.
Uh-oh, there's no more Sea of Thieves on your game
I
screen.
know it
What's going
froze.
on?
I'm trying to get that going. So keep on keeping on.
But in general, if we were just to say what I think would be cool if Xbox could license an IP, right? So let's say we know that the Lucasfilms games is licensing out a whole bunch of IP that they hold the rights to in the
Mhm.
Star Wars universe, Indiana Jones. Machine Games, we've seen surprising everybody doing an Indiana Jones game, which I'm really looking forward to. Ubisoft's doing a Star Wars game, and we know EA's still doing stuff like Battlefront and Jedi Fallen Order 2. What if this would be really cool? The Coalition, after they put out Gears 6 in 2023, because I do think that's their next title they're working on. What if after that they're like, okay, we've completed this new Gears trilogy. Gears needs to take a break. What if we licensed out The Mandalorian
The Mandalorian Coalition
from
makes a
from
Mandalorian.
Lucasfilm game, and they make a Mandalorian game?
You're gonna
What do you think about
task
that?
my squad at the Coalition to make Baby Yoda? Is that what you're telling me right now?
Yeah, I'm just saying. I think that would be incredibly cool.
I could see some wild possibilities. That's big. That's a lot of licenses happening at the same time. So I mean, I think that's. I mean, again, we're in the realm of wild possibilities. So that's interesting that you would go with Coalition to make a Mandalorian game.
Or what a lot of people want is, hey, Obsidian, Lucasfilms, have you guys met? Knights of the Old Republic. Remake Knights of the Old Republic 3, whatever you want to do it. Get back in the game, right? A lot of people talking about that.
There's been a lot of rumors and rumblings about Knights of the Old Republic coming back in one way or another. Likely maybe a remake at this point, but people are saying maybe a fresh game in the series as well. So that would be pretty cool to see. I know that's a very beloved series. So got to get to some super chats here. Damn, we got a bunch. Gunstar, check Miles's hair. Must be windy out. Yeah, it's I'm out here peacocking for Rand. Jez Corden with the super chat. Rand secretly loves Animal Crossing. Is this true?
No, this isn't true. Jez is trying to get me to play more stuff for charity. He's plotting with PMS Jordan behind the scenes to get me to play some MMO, and I'm already told him it's never going to happen. I don't care how much money you think you're going to raise for charity. It's not happening at all, period. End of discussion. End of story. I'm sorry. I'm not doing that again. You got your one, hey, let's get Rand to play some game you'll never play in Pokemon. You're never going to get me to play Animal Crossing. You're never going to get me to play World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy 14 or whatever MMO. It's not happening, Jez. Go back to bed.
Wow, you heard it here, folks. Rand al Thor 19 hates charity. It is confirmed.
Let me, if you want to talk about charity, which the charity comes to Rand al Thor 19's pockets, then we can talk. But
we can talk
until then.
Another super chat from Mr. Joanna Dark. I would like to see the initiative tackle Metal Gear Solid and the Coalition to make Contra, while Tango Gameworks would then tackle Castlevania.
The initiative working on Metal Gear Solid would be pretty interesting, considering they're already in the stealth genre with Perfect Dark. Now that could be something pretty cool.
Yeah, I want to see what Perfect Dark is going to be. I want to see if it's going to be more in line with Hitman or if it's going to be more of an action game, because we know it's coming, but we still don't really know if it's first person or third person. I imagine they're going to go third person with this one, but yeah, it'd be interesting to see what the initiative tackles after Perfect Dark. If they're going to be kind of Xbox's stealth. For you, Rand, they're going to fill that Splinter Cell void, right?
Yeah, I mean, considering we can't get a Splinter Cell game from Ubisoft, we might as well be able to get one from Xbox with Perfect Dark. Although Hitman is an incredible stealth franchise, although it's not really in the same vein of Splinter Cell. When you play both of those, it's a little bit different, but still great. I mean, have you played Hitman 3 at all?
It's hilarious, dude. The fact that you can grab anything and just lob it at someone's face, it never gets old. I spent hours just literally picking up bottles of wine and just throwing them at people's faces. And that's all I needed. I didn't need a story. I didn't need a good story. I didn't need anything else. I just needed the option to beat someone with a banana and throw bottles of wine at people's faces. And for me, that's it. That's a great game.
No, I've been playing a lot. I think I'm like 50 hours in. Since I own Hitman 1 and 2 and you can replay them in 3, I went through both those games, beat Hitman 1 and 2, and now I'm on the 3rd level of Hitman 3. And it has a pretty good story, though, that's set up in between the chapters and stuff, and it's so freaking good.
Yeah,
and we're talking really about special. Dream acquisitions. Phil, if you're listening, please. IO Interactive is out there.
Papa Phil,
they're independent.
Pull the wallet out. Let's go.
They're private. I know you've had talks with them before, and talks. They always can go one of two ways. You come together and you buy them like Playground and Ninja Theory, and sometimes you can't find that common ground, and you walk away. I think it's a mistake to let IO walk away.
Slip between your
fingers. Doing Bond now.
Let's go. Yeah, they're big. They're hot shots now. Got that big IP. I'm gonna unplug my capture card real quick. One sec. Apologies there. Do you care about James Bond while we're on that topic, Rand? Do you care about that IP?
Like the game that they're making? I care about it because IO Interactive.
Exactly. If you eliminate IO Interactive from the equation, if somebody just said a new James Bond game is being made, are you interested? Do you really care?
Slightly interested, but
okay.
I would have to see gameplay and stuff. Like with this, their IO's making it. I'm interested. I don't need to see what the game is like. I'm gonna play it because of their pedigree. James Bond really. It's been one of those things where you think somebody. It would still be around, and who did the last James Bond game? I think it was it Blur before they were shut down?
What even was the last James Bond game? Was it the GoldenEye remake on Wii thing?
No, there was one that I think Blur did after Activision bought them. I think they were Blur, or no, they were Bizarre Creations who made Blur. My bad. Who used to make Project Gotham Racing? Remember?
Oh yeah.
Activision bought them, and I think they did release a James Bond game, and that was their last game they put out, and Activision shut them down. And I don't think there's been a James Bond game since, because there was a Quantum of Solace tie-in when that movie came out.
Oh, that's right.
And then there was a newer one, and then I think they remade GoldenEye at some point, because I remember playing that. Like updated it, like it wasn't like the it wasn't the N64 one. I wonder if somebody can help me out here in chat, but there was a Quantum of Solace game, there was an updated like remake of GoldenEye, and then Blur made a James Bond game that I didn't play, and then they got shut down. And we've never had a James Bond game since. And that was during the 360 era.
Yeah, it's been a while. It's been a hot minute, and it's interesting to see because historically, licensed video games have not been great. They've been middle of the road, AA.
Choco says in the chat it's Bloodstone. That's right.
Okay, cool.
Bloodstone,
cool. So it's interesting to see that like these licensed games, like Indiana Jones, it's going to be a high-profile release. It's not going to be some AA, like, no buzz around it, which has historically been the case with, even people who beloved the one that just came to Games with Gold, which is widely considered the best Indiana Jones game. Even that one, when it launched, it didn't launch with a big bang. It wasn't a big deal. So it'll be interesting to see more licensed games coming from huge studios with huge budgets. Super chat hype. We got a couple. Edward King says Aspire Media is doing a Knights of the Old Republic game. Yeah, it sounds like they are doing something. I think they were the original publishers as well, so that's interesting. They're also bringing Stubbs the Zombie. Oddly enough, is coming to Xbox in March. That's interesting. I'm excited to see that one coming back in some way, shape, or form. Another super chat from Dead Planet. Oh, we got a bunch. Y'all crushing it. We got 177 in here. Smash that like button and share it out. Let's get to, like I said, let's get to 10,000 people in here. Make Rand feel good about himself. Bringing up Conker, don't you think Xbox is in a unique position to be the home for an R-rated Mario platformer? I compare it to Deadpool's success being rated R in a kid-friendly Marvel atmosphere. I'm personally in the camp that we'll probably never see Conker ever again, but what are your thoughts?
I don't think we will ever see Conker ever again. Although there is a possibility we will see a Banjo. You know, my buddy Cloburl on Twitter, who covers Xbox extensively, if you aren't following him for Xbox news and insight, you probably should. I would want Conker to come back for him.
You know? That's what I want. I'm not a huge Banjo fan. I like Banjo.
No, fine. Me neither. Me and Colt and Dealer, we're all just like, man, Banjo. And we always tease like Lord Attic of the Iron Lord podcast, which I see Lord Cognito in the chat.
Shout out to Lord Cognito.
Shout out to Lord Cognito and the Iron Lords. Yeah, like I've always kind of jokingly said, and some people take this as like me being serious, but I'm not. Like, Banjo should never come back, right? I'm not a fan of Banjo, but I understand like there are people out there who enjoy the franchise who really want it to come back. And I do want that franchise to come back so those people can have their game. I wouldn't be interested in it, even though I probably would play it. But I like to see other people happy. You know, that there's when other people around you are happy because they get what you want, you still feel good. Like, I want all my Xbox brethren, for those that want Banjo to come back, I want them to feel good. So yes, I want Microsoft to make a Banjo, and I think they are. I think they probably have plans to bring back a Banjo, and I wouldn't be surprised if they essentially remade the first game. Like, they just did a Banjo 1 remake, but slightly different with some changes. I do think we will see Banjo, but I think we will never see a Conker. I think that franchise is dead and buried.
Yeah, I agree there. Again, I'm in the same camp. I want Banjo for Banjo fans. Banjo fans at this point deserve a new Banjo game. I remember the excitement, the hype when Banjo was revealed for Smash. There was you could feel the energy. People were so excited, so hungry to have Banjo back in some way, shape, or form. And that's the reason that I want to see Banjo come back. 3D platformers in general, like, it's really hit or miss. There are some that are incredible, that completely like redefine gaming as a whole, and then there's a bunch of middle of the road ones that are not that great. Banjo for me was always fine. I liked it. I beat it on Nintendo 64 back in the day. Replayed it when they re-released on like Xbox 360 arcade, but I'm not the biggest fan. I could give or take personally, but I want it for the fans. It has to happen for the fans, and I think there is a legit possibility that is coming or already actively being worked on. Super chat hype from Snowdragon. How much studio consolidation do you see happening this year? Streaming services say you need content. Streaming services say you need content. What do you? I guess I'm confused when you say consolidation. Are you suggesting that Xbox is going to close studios?
People no, like, people when they talk about consolidation, they're talking about like everybody buying publishers and studios, like Gearbox and Asper Media getting acquired by Embracer, right? Two independent entities now becoming a part of one. Bethesda joining Microsoft, basically taking, a bunch of studios and publishers and just moving them closer and closer to what we have in the movie scene, where Disney now owns Fox.
You look at the web of Disney, which there's like 4 companies that own everything. It's interesting.
Yeah, exactly. So people are worried that Microsoft buys Bethesda, Tencent buys Take-Two, PlayStation responds by buying Capcom or Square Enix, Xbox then buys Sega, and you start to see a lot of these publishers and independent studios basically go by the wayside, and they're all just owned by a few, huge multi-billion corporations. That's what they mean by that, and a lot of people don't want that to happen, but I think it's inevitable at this point. I mean, we've already seen it happening. Like, there's hardly any more big AAA independent developers. I mean, they're getting snatched up because the big companies, they know they need content, and financial security is really wanted in this time. So, and now it's the time to sell too. If you're looking to sell your business, and video game industry was proven to be very resilient and grew, one of the few sectors that grew during the pandemic, which is going to be around for a bit longer, right? It's not just going to disappear because the vaccine's here. There's a lot of companies that want to get into that, and a lot of companies that think this is a time to sell, that the price is high enough. And especially when you have a company like Xbox that has some pretty grand plans for what they want to do with Game Pass and their studios and the targets they want to hit and their goals that they have. I think they realize that they know they need more than what they currently have. So now you have that kind of all factoring in, where somebody before may not have wanted to sell, but now they could get way more than they ever have, and you actually have potential buyers. Like Gearbox, which Jez said on the podcast yesterday, he had heard that Gearbox was shopping itself around to multiple publishers, and that's something I had heard as well. They wanted to be acquired, is the rumors on the streets. So you have a little bit of that going on as well. So people are afraid of that, but I think it's just going to happen over these next 5 years. You're going to see more and more companies just gobble up other smaller companies.
Yeah, we're in the war of services right now. That is more important than anything else right now. As we've seen with Netflix is the prime example of somebody who kind of shook up the industry, and they were kind of laughed at initially when they said they were going to do streaming. People are like, "Oh, you can't do streaming. That's not going to work." And now you look at the value of Netflix and you look at the scope of Netflix. Netflix is now bigger, or they were bigger at one point this year, than Disney. So in a very brief period of time, Netflix became huge. Netflix's value grew, and they were investing, and that's because they were investing in all these exclusives. And that's going to be what Xbox is doing with Xbox Game Pass, is they want to make sure that the stream of content in Xbox Game Pass is not only consistent, but consistently delivering like big games that people really want to play. Because we can get into the semantics of like Xbox versus PlayStation IP, but objectively speaking, from a casual subsect, PlayStation has done a better job of putting out games and publishing games that people feel are must plays and people need to own them. I personally have bought a PlayStation 4 and 5 for a single game. Like I play more than just the one game, obviously, but that is the power of some of those releases. And that is the position that Xbox is working to get themselves into. They want to put out games that somebody looks at and says, I have to have Game Pass because I have to play this game. And that's what they're working towards, and that's why they've been investing so much, and that's why they're going to continue to invest. I guess we can kind of segue into, who do you think, outside of, we did the fantasy bit earlier, who do you think realistically Xbox is going to try to acquire next?
I think it's a good thing we didn't play Sea of Thieves, because it's what's going on with your PC, Miles? What's going on with Sea of Thieves? It's frozen on screen.
It's just dumpster fire. It's just one of those days, The gods are trying to keep us. The gods are trying to keep this stream from happening. The mighty showdown. They're trying to stop it, Rand, but we're not going to let a capture card or the Xbox PC app or anyone stop this from happening. So
realistically, well, this
boring. It can be boring. I'm just saying.
Realistically. But the thing is this all changed once Bethesda was bought. Any realistic predictions basically can fly out the window, because once you open up that wallet, what?
Sky's the limit.
Well, once you open up that wallet, because when you look at, I remember when Microsoft was interested in WB Games during the summer, right? And as much as I wanted Microsoft to acquire them, because man, they have some world-class developers at Warner Brothers, right? I understand some of the hangups about the IP. You spend that type of money, which was around $4 billion. You don't get any IP in return. You'd have to license them. I understand that. And I thought at the time that I was like, man, this is kind of just fantasy wish list, right? Because I just didn't see Microsoft. I just didn't see Satya giving Phil that amount of money for a single purchase. I was like, as great as it would be, because definitely Microsoft needed more teams. They had 15 at that time. And they definitely needed more. I was like, man, I don't know if Satya and Amy Hood are going to give Phil that type of capital, right? And so I kind of like wrote it off, even though they were interested in. And I know Microsoft has playbooks where they have, uh, you know, uh, they have basically kind of like game planned about buying any of the publishers. Like that's no secret. Like
Mhm.
there are game plans within Microsoft where they, how would we go about buying EA? How would we go about buying Activision? Et cetera, et cetera. But that's what a good company does. It doesn't necessarily mean they'll go and do it, but the path of how it's laid out is kind of, you know, uh, what's the word I'm looking for? Essentially worked out, game planned, right? But then it all changed with Bethesda because it opened up this scenario where now nothing's off the table. And if you're willing to spend that amount of money on, a publisher like that, then, I know what people want to hear. Then who's to say that Xbox couldn't get Sega, right? Which is the current hot topic right now.
Yeah.
Um, everybody's like Sega, 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 and I agree with Sam Tolbert in chat that Ubisoft, right? There's some smoke around Ubisoft, but Ubisoft has like 15,000 employees. They're recently coming off like a huge scandal. I'm not necessarily sure that would be integrated very, very well, even though Ubisoft has a lot of great IP and they're a good publisher. That probably would be a nightmare scenario for anybody buying to try to integrate them into whatever you'd want. So, but then you look at Sega, and the thing with Sega was always, well, it's Japanese, and there's always those red flags when you have a U.S. company trying to buy a Japanese one, which there's some truth to that, but not that big of a deal. But it was always, well, if you bought Sega, you'd have to buy their, the Sammy division and the pachinko business
Mhm.
and all that stuff, which Microsoft wouldn't want whatsoever. And then recently, we got the news that Sega was splitting their businesses based, their console business from their pachinko business and all the other things. And now Sega becomes a much more realistic target acquisition. Um, Personally, Sega doesn't get me excited like Bethesda got me excited, like Ninja Theory got me excited, like Playground did in Obsidian,
Yeah.
just because uh, I think Sega's output in recent years hasn't very much been the best. And this is coming from somebody who hasn't really played a Yakuza game. And I know people will be like, Yakuza, or Persona Rand. Oh my God. And it's like, well, I haven't played either of those. So I'm not really sure. I'm just kind of looking at like how Sonic has diminished as a franchise over the years. I could see why Microsoft might be interested in because of their PC presence. You have Relic and you have what's the other developer? You have a Creative Assembly, and you have
Oh yeah, exactly.
that
Yeah,
the
the
like so,
RTS kind of stable
yeah,
that
you
they
have the
have.
RTS and Mike, and this is one thing I think Xbox fans need to realize is that I think Microsoft, they're going to focus on things that they know they need, and one of the things that they're really lacking right now is PC development, PC developers. So I could see Sega being an acquisition where Microsoft is like, okay, this would really bump up our presence on PC and get some really good PC first developers, which Microsoft wants to sell Game Pass on PC. I mean, that's no surprise. So
Yeah.
Sega, just for that, just for their PC uh, uh, aspect, definitely fits into that. And a lot of people, like I think in chat, I mean, a lot of people right here, some are very much high on it, and some are very much low. Um, it could happen, but it's one of those things with acquisitions where you get people to come together to talk about it, and you just can't agree. You float an offer to them, they float a counter offer, or etc. Vice versa, and you just like way apart on the money, right? Um,
Yeah, there's probably so
but I
many
do
like
think,
potential deals that are happening behind the scenes that we never hear about and will never hear about, where there's an offer on the table. Here's the amount of money, counter offer comes through, deal dissolves. So there's probably a lot of things that we would never even consider that have probably been an actual legitimate possibility happening behind the scenes.
yeah, I mean, it would help their Japanese presence for sure. But I think it would be more for them. It would be more about the PC side of things. Um,
Yeah.
but that's the thing. But like we mentioned, like they could be talking. Maybe they already finished talks and if they couldn't come to a deal. These things happen. Like Microsoft has talked to plenty of developers about joining Xbox Game Studios over the course of the last couple of years, and talks didn't go the way they wanted, and they developers walk away, Xbox walks away. These things are incredibly complicated to, and I know people are like, well, get it done. I mean, Microsoft has bought a lot, right? 8 studios in 2018. They bought Double Fine in 2019. They literally bought Bethesda last year. So it does seem like Microsoft is they're on the prowl. And there's rumors that they were talking to at Bungie at one point, and IO Interactive and Ready at Dawn, and all those things. But I think Sega is a possibility, and I'm not going to say it's going to happen because who knows, right? Who knows? But I do think Microsoft is going to acquire somebody this year. I do think after the Bethesda deal closes, because I think that's what the team is 100% focused on, is getting that deal closed ASAP. And we know that the European Union is set to vote on it, set to approve it by March 5th. I think they probably approve it even earlier than that. That thing's going down without a fight. And then the US has to approve it. They want that deal done as soon as possible. And then after that deal is done, and maybe they start looking at other opportunities. But I do think they will buy somebody this year, and I'm not saying it'll be a publisher or a different developer, but I think at some point in the next couple of years, Microsoft does buy another publisher. I think they snatch somebody up. I don't know who it's going to be. It could be Sega. It could be Paradox Interactive, who also is a publisher heavy on the PC side of things. That's where I think Microsoft is going to focus next, is on their PC investment, which they should, considering what happened to the Xbox app today on PC. But yeah, I mean, as far as like the bigger corporations like EA, I don't see them touching EA. A lot of EA's value is in multi-platform development and microtransactions, and you would essentially, and also like the sports licenses, which I would you lose those if you bought EA? If you bought EA and you spent that money and you now have Madden and FIFA, do you lose those licenses? Would those games still be required to be multi-platform? Probably.
Yeah, I mean, look at MLB The Show. At a certain point, like those franchises, like MLB wants money. They don't care who's developing it. They don't care about platform exclusivity. Like they're not invested in that topic at all. They want money, and that means multi-platform. So I don't see any of those EA sports franchises becoming Xbox exclusives. Like there's too much legality involved with all of that.
Yeah, and the same thing with like Activision and Blizzard. There's a lot of money there. Take-Two is incredibly expensive, although you do get Grand Theft Auto with that, which would be that would be something. And I would imagine if you did get Grand Theft Auto, I know that's so here's a dream thing. I want to ask you, because I had this conversation with one of my buddies. Hypothetical, right? This is just like, it's probably not going to happen, but let's imagine if it did. Microsoft acquires Take-Two, Rockstar, right? So now Microsoft owns Grand Theft Auto. Rockstar is now an Xbox developer. They're making Grand Theft Auto 6. Potentially the next biggest game of all time, just like Grand Theft Auto 5. You're Phil Spencer. You own Rockstar. What do? Do you use Rockstar as bait and keep Grand Theft Auto 6 exclusive to Xbox to drive engagement and people into Game Pass? Because that would be the biggest thing ever to hit Game Pass day one, right? Grand Theft Auto is the biggest franchise. Or do you look at it like Minecraft, where it makes so much money that you would be like, you know what? We probably need to keep this multi-platform to keep the money coming in. What would you decide? And I want to know what you would think, and I want to know what the chat thinks. If you like, and kind of put aside like, oh, I want Xbox to do better, so it needs to be exclusive. You're running the business. What is best for the business? Is it best for the business that Grand Theft Auto 6 is exclusive to drive Game Pass and all that stuff? Or is it best for the business for Grand Theft Auto to remain everywhere to bring in as much money as possible? I'm interested in hearing what you think, Miles.
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. I'm going to get to a super chat real quick and then answer that. Dead Planet says, what potential exclusives could ACG have meant? Oh, that's... I heard that going around. When you say something vague, like somebody's buying 2 exclusives, Xbox is buying 2 exclusives, Does that mean anything to you? Did you have any sort of inclinations when you heard that kind of buzz going around?
No, I mean, it only just reinforces what I've heard, that there's a lot of smoke
Yes. Yes.
around all this. You know, I don't have a guess about who Carrick ACG could be talking about, but like it definitely lines up with some of the stuff I've heard before he said that. So, you know, sometimes when there's smoke, when there's fire. But then again, I also look at what happened with Bungie, and there was a lot of smoke about Microsoft and Bungie talking about acquisitions. But hey, Phil didn't say anything, but Pete Parsons, the CEO of Bungie, came out and basically said, no, that's not happening.
Yeah.
But like a lot of people I know behind the scenes were like, no, it happened. You know, it's just, it's, I, the thing is like with all this is like, there may be smoke and things probably are happening. It's just that you don't know if they're going to complete anything. You know what I mean? That's the problem with all this. But yeah, it definitely lines up with some of the stuff I've been hearing.
Exactly.
But
And
but
it's
but give me, find out the rock. I want to hear your rock star answer, Miles. Come
yeah,
on.
yeah, let's get back to that. It's and then again to your that question. It's rumor season. There's a lot of there isn't news, so people are generating their own news, and it's hard to separate the legitimate kind of possibilities with the wild speculation. So yes, saying that Xbox is getting like 2 exclusives this year is not really a wild statement to make. Anyone can say that, and it's probably going to be true. I don't have any specifics that I've heard in that regard. But to the Rockstar question, that is super interesting. So we have, again, two totally different approaches to this. You could, in theory, as Xbox, say, okay, we need to ramp up Game Pass numbers. We need to make sure that Xbox Game Pass is the definitive streaming platform for gaming. We have Grand Theft Auto, which is one of the biggest video game franchises of all time. Grand Theft Auto Online consistently makes obscene amounts of money, so people still play it. It has been out for what 10 years, and it still sells an obscene amount, more copies than most new releases do in a month, which is wild. So do you take that and say, okay, you know what we're going to do? We're going to put Grand Theft Auto into Xbox Game Pass on day one. For me personally, I wouldn't probably make it an exclusive because of how big it is and how much money there is. What I would do is I would incentivize something within Game Pass. Like if you're playing Grand Theft Auto on Game Pass, you get it early. Like let's say a week, even if it's like a week early. Like if you play Grand Theft Auto on Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, you can play it a week early. For a lot of people, that is going to be huge. And that alone is going to make people sign up for Xbox Game Pass. But there's a lot of money that would be left on the table if you made that an exclusive because of the way that they want to focus on the online component of it. So whatever the next Grand Theft Auto is going to have a huge online component. And when you do the exclusive stuff with those kind of services, you're alienating and eliminating a potential huge pool of players and money. So from a boring business perspective, I would not make it exclusive, but I would incentivize the hell out of Xbox Game Pass in some way, shape, or form that makes it so people will sign up for it without being the bad guy and without making it, Xbox is super afraid of being the bad guy right now, as we saw with the Xbox Live Gold price increase. They don't want to be the bad guy, regardless of what it takes. And if you make Grand Theft Auto an exclusive, there's going to be a contingent of people who think you're the bad guy. So with a franchise of that scale and scope, I would figure out a way to make Game Pass an undeniable option for people who want to have the best Grand Theft Auto experience.
That's a good answer. I was thinking like you could essentially, you know, have Grand Theft Auto as a 1 year exclusive on Xbox and then put it on PlayStation a year later to drive that. But it's an interesting question because, you know, you do got to think about, how much money you're spending on all this, and if Grand Theft Auto is more important making as much money as it's always made to you, or having the franchise essentially be lessened by keeping it to one platform. It's an interesting discussion because I'd imagine some of that is going on right now with Bethesda, right? What do you do with Bethesda's titles? Are you do you take the less revenue by putting them on strictly on Xbox to drive Game Pass as essentially a loss leader until you can get Game Pass up to those numbers where it's rolling in money, or do you put them on PlayStation because you want to make back some of that initial investment faster? Isn't that some of the argument people have with why Microsoft would keep them on PlayStation?
Because they need the
Is
money.
that they need
the money, Rand.
even though they made $15 billion in the last quarter in profit, which covered two of those investments. That it kind of goes that question, which is why, whenever this Bethesda deal closes, I think we'll find out pretty definitively what their plans are. Whether or not they do rounds of interviews afterwards where like Phil Spencer and Todd Howard talk about it. Somebody's going to ask the question, and you know it, Miles, right? If you had Phil Spencer on here the day after the Bethesda deal closed, what would literally be the first question you would ask him?
All right,
or
Phil,
anybody?
When are you getting From Software? That would be the first question I would ask.
Well, not anymore, considering Sony just
actually wait.
Like
I'd back up 1 second. Where's Phantom Dust? And then when are you buying From Software? In that order.
Yeah. But you get people are going to want to know, because Phil's been very much case by case basis, and then he said, well, I can't really talk about it legally yet because we don't own them. But now that you legally own them, and I'm sure they probably had discussions, a journalist would be like, so what are your plans? And, they can't tiptoe around the fact like, hey, well, like find out later. Like, people are going to want to know, like, so what's up with Starfield? Is that coming to PlayStation? What's up with Wolfenstein 3? Like, you're going to have to give a definitive answer sooner or later.
Yeah, you can't be the ambiguous nice guys forever. At a certain point, you're going to have to say definitively yes or no. Is this going to be on PlayStation?
Exactly. And people are going to want to know. And I think they are saving that announcement as a big moment. Because there was a lot of people who said, well, if they were planning on keeping everything exclusive when they acquired them back in September, why not just say it then? Because it would drive sales. But clearly, there's no Xbox consoles to buy right now. There's no PS5 consoles to buy. If you came out today and said Bethesda games are exclusive moving forward, doesn't matter. You can't sell any hardware right now, right? All the pre-orders were going to sell out back in September, regardless of whether or not you made the announcement that the games would be exclusive. Exactly. So to me, it makes sense to hold off on that announcement, because it would have a bigger impact later this year when there's actually consoles to buy. And essentially, you'd have two big moments. You'd have the moment of you purchasing Bethesda, which got people hyped. They did it the day before pre-orders. Like, how insane was that? You remember that, Miles?
The energy that week was, no one saw that coming. Like, I remember waking up at like 7 a.m. and my group chat, like with my friends, was already blowing up, like with screenshots of like Bethesda or Xbox bought Bethesda. And I was like, excuse me, wait, what?
And yeah, right. The day before pre-orders basically sell out. And then you could save that second announcement of, yeah, so that was pretty huge, but here's our plans, and all the games are exclusive sometime this year, and then people would know, and then people could start planning their console purchase or whatever they want to do. So I've said repeatedly that I think the vast majority of those games will be only on Xbox, or only on a platform that is Game Pass, rather, right?
Yeah.
If your platform has Game Pass, if your platform has Game Pass, the Bethesda games will be on it. Which means, if Nintendo Switch allowed Game Pass, then the Bethesda games would be there. If PlayStation allowed Game Pass, then the Bethesda games would be there. I don't think PlayStation or Nintendo's going to allow it, so I don't think they will. But yeah, that's the whole argument with like, do you keep them exclusive? Do you keep them multi-plat? What's your goal? I think their goal is to drive Game Pass and to drive people to Xbox. So I think the vast majority of those games will be exclusive. But we just got to wait for that announcement, Miles. And I don't want to wait that much longer, to be honest with you. I want to know now.
I know. That's the mystery. There's so much quiet mystery right now, and we're in a very slow season. So everyone wants all those juicy details. We know Bethesda's a done deal. Like, people at this point just want to move on, want to know how the exclusivity rollout's going to work with Bethesda, and then people are just hungry to see what's next. Because they know the people who are saying that money is an issue for Xbox are not looking at the numbers. Money is not an issue. That is not the reason, because there's obviously the monopoly laws that would keep Xbox from buying everyone and anyone, but Xbox can essentially buy anyone and everyone if it was just a matter of money. If money was the only hurdle, they could go and buy anyone that they wanted, which is insane to think about. And it's insane when you look at the financial numbers that Microsoft and Xbox bring in every quarter. It's staggering. It's more money than any of us can even wrap our minds around. But yeah, we want to know what's next. We want to know all the juicy details, and we don't really know what Xbox's year for 2021 looks like right now, which I think is a good segue into kind of the next topic I wanted to discuss today, which is the talks of Xbox events. We know Xbox is taking the pandemic to reevaluate how they do live events and how the cadence of live events. The producing manager of Xbox recently posted that they are looking for a video producer on contract, full-time video producer, until June of this year. So that leads me to believe that Xbox is going to have a big push on media focus, whether that's big events like game showcases, but they're going to have a big video push leading into E3. And that's why this contract position ends in June, is because they want to have the first half of the year to let you know what the second half and beyond of this year is going to look like. So what are your thoughts on what Xbox is going to do for 2021? We know Halo Infinite is coming out in this November. But outside of that, when it comes to Xbox Game Studios, we don't have any idea of what Xbox is doing this year, really. When it comes to first-party games, it's wide open. 2021 right now is wide open outside of Halo Infinite. So how do you think Xbox is going to approach the way that they present things? And what specifically do you think they're going to present leading into E3, which probably won't happen in a physical sense again this year? And shout out to the 237 people watching live. If you're enjoying the show, smash that like button, share it out there. Let's get to 10K.
So what was the question again?
So the question is,
rephrase that.
The question is, what do you what does Xbox's year for 2021 look like outside of Halo Infinite? How are they going to present new games, and what new games do you think they're going to present and potentially release in 2021 outside of Halo?
That is the question. What does Xbox have for 2021, right? Outside of Halo?
Wide open right now.
I think we get, depending on if this Forza Horizon 4 leak is just the Hot Wheels car pack. If it's just a Hot Wheels car pack and not an expansion, then I think we do get Forza Horizon 5 in September, as usual, to go along with Halo Infinite. And more than likely, probably the Forza Halo combo will be the last cross-gen games Microsoft does for the generation. So, I think Forza Horizon 5 comes out potentially in September. It's on Xbox Series X and S, on Xbox One, just like Halo. I also really do think Starfield is this year, and that game will come out in October as well, be exclusive to Xbox. And Psychonauts 2 is going to come out at some point. I said first half of this year. I was thinking maybe May, potentially. I don't think it's March. I think we'd know if it was March already, so probably April, May. I'd expect Psychonauts 2. And then I also believe Age 4 is going to come out this year for PC, sometime a little bit after summer. Maybe August, maybe early September. I think Age 4 will come out on PC. And that's kind of what I'm expecting from Xbox first party this year, with the possibility of something like Wolfenstein 3 also hitting 2021. Although realistically, I think Wolfenstein 3 is next year. I think maybe early 2022. I think maybe would be a good landing spot for Wolfenstein 3. Because I know a lot of people were like, well, their next games is Indiana Jones, but I'm pretty positive that they've been working on Wolfenstein 3 for quite some time, and that game I think Wolfenstein 3 is going to get revealed this year for sure. And then that I think it releases next year. I expect Microsoft to have multiple gaming events. I think there'll be one huge event like they do in the summer to replace E3, very much like they did the game showcase in July last year, where they show off gameplay. Because it's about time we see gameplay for a lot of these games. I don't mind a CGI trailer for the very first time you show something off, but when you're getting to the second showing of your game, I want to see what the game looks like. And I think Hellblade 2 and Avowed and Everwild, Forza Motorsport, I believe those games are all set for 2022. So if you're looking at an event to see those type of announcements, to see what those games are, I think those games are be held more in June, July timeframe to set up for next year to kind of start giving more release windows, because that was one of the problems with the July game showcase last year was there was no timing on anything. It was like, okay, Halo Infinite's supposed to be at the end of the year, and then it got delayed, but there was no windows for pretty much any of the other games from first party that they showed. But I also think there might be something sooner than that, because you're in this situation where everything's got to be a digital event, right, Miles?
Exactly.
So you don't
Physical
have
events
to
are
you
not
don't
happening.
have to rent. Yeah, you don't have to rent out a show floor. You don't gotta go all out. And when you look at other companies and what they do, Nintendo does multiple directs throughout a year. Let people know what's coming to the Switch platform. PlayStation does multiple state of plays. And Xbox always kind of stuck to like, we're going to have that one day at this one moment where it's all going to be about Xbox. But with the pandemic changing all that, and clearly all the companies seem to be very happy with how much traction they got not being at E3,
Mm-hmm.
I think they're just going to have multiple things where whether or not they bring back Inside Xbox or whether they do just another like 30-minute, hey, here's more games coming to the Game Pass day one, and maybe throw in a first party announcement or whatever. I think we get multiple events, so to speak, but then they're like the one huge one, where they drop a whole bunch of new announcements, because they do have a lot of things to announce. Like I mentioned, like they need to show gameplay for a bunch of stuff, and then Bethesda's going to have a whole bunch of games that they're getting ready to unveil. Like I mentioned, Wolfenstein 3, Arcane's next project. We need to get a deep dive into Starfield. There's a whole bunch that they can kind of hold on to, and that's when I think the rest of the year or whatever is set for. And as you mentioned, that job posting, if you're hiring a full production manager, you're probably hiring somebody to put those uh, trailers together and whatnot. And that sounds about right to give it to the time frame that they would need, June, July. So yeah, that's kind of what I see for 2021. Forza Horizon 5, Starfield, Halo Infinite, Age 4, potential for Wolfenstein, but I don't really believe so. And that's what I think the back half looks like for the year.
Yeah, I agree with you in a lot of ways there. It's sadly, and this is probably going to bum a lot of Xbox fans out, I think the bulk of this year is going to be announcements, and that's why Xbox is going to focus on events that kind of showcase what the future holds, because yeah, outside of Psychonauts 2, potentially a new Forza Horizon, Halo, I don't think we're going to see a ton of big first-party Xbox games. We know they're being worked on. We know they're being developed. I don't think a lot of them are ready, especially with the way last year went. Last year, as we've seen with the first part of this year, has delayed a lot of things. We're going to see a lot of delays. So for me, I still don't think Starfield is coming this year. I think they wanted it to come out this year, but with the way last year went and the profile of that game, I personally don't think it's coming out this year. But again, I'd love to be wrong. I hope Xbox has some big surprises that are coming in the near future outside of Halo. I want something to kind of fill the gap between February and November in a big way. So I'm hoping Xbox has something that they can drop. But again, to your point, I don't think it's going to be a blockbuster year in terms of first-party Xbox releases. But again, maybe with Game Pass, we'll see some kind of cool partnerships with some third-party titles, some bigger third-party releases to kind of fill the void in the meantime.
Well, so to kind of branch off on that, Game Pass, I expect Game Pass to partner with Ubisoft.
Yeah, absolutely. I think. Yeah,
I mean, I like 99% expect that to happen at the end of the year, where just like with EA Play, it'll basically be, hey, you own Game Pass Ultimate, you have all of Ubisoft's games. I do think that is 100% happening.
I think that's a really smart move for Xbox. I mean, yeah, like we talked about earlier, I don't think Xbox wants to buy Ubisoft. It's kind of a mess. It's a huge acquisition, a lot of work. But a partnership like that gets those big IP like Assassin's Creed into Game Pass, and therefore gets them into the Xbox ecosystem in one way, shape, or form. Couple super chat hypes. We got Edward King, who says, no new Clobreel tweet got me excited. I saw a couple people talking about that. If anyone wants to drop some context for that, I'm not on Twitter right now, but and
I'm on Twitter.
Did Clobreel drop a bombshell while we're recording?
I mean,
here?
not really. It's just all he said was responding to a few common questions. One, I expect Halo Infinite not to be the only big Xbox first party release in the second half of 2021, which we literally just talked about, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't expect additional acquisitions soon. Full focus and attention on Bethesda, which is what we said. I said the team was entirely 100% focused on Bethesda. And I don't expect any acquisitions soon, but I guess that defines what you mean by soon. You know, some people think soon, like, I guess, yeah, like soon. I'm not, like, we were talking about Sega and all these acquisitions. If those happen, I don't think those happen soon.
Yeah, and by soon, I mean like in the next month or two, but.
Yeah, so and then he said focus now is production, presentations, demos, in summer, which, yeah, that goes along with what we were just talking about a big gaming event where they show off gameplay. I mean, it's pretty much what we literally been talking about, Miles. We're right on the money.
We're right on the money. So you're hyped about Clobreel, but not hyped about us? What's up with that?
Yeah. Well, you know, Kerbal, a lot of people, I mean, Chloe's been right about a lot of stuff, so people always look to him to be like, if he says something, then, you know, there's a good,
it's
there's
the
a
gospel.
good, you know,
it's the Xbox gospel.
It's gone. Nobody cares about Miles and Rand. I mean, we're nothing.
Just a couple of clowns on YouTube. Another super chat from Dead Planet, who asks, do you think anything drops during the Super Bowl? Do you think anybody's going to shell out the big money for a Super Bowl spot?
As much as I would love to see a gaming spot at the Super Bowl, I don't think we've ever seen one, and I don't think we will this year either. I mean, what would be the point? Nobody can buy a PS5 and a Series X right now. So you spend all the money advertising the system, and then nobody can buy it?
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. Until basically June of this year, it's going to be really hard to get a console. So I'm super grateful I managed to get the Series X and the PS5 when I did. It took me, with the PS5 especially, a lot of work. But yeah, AMD has come out and basically said, there's issues. We're working on it. We're doing what we can, but please don't expect a lot of consoles before June. And so, yeah, to your point, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to pay Super Bowl money for an ad spot for something that nobody can buy. Unless it is like, the only thing I could potentially think is like with Xbox's big push to reinvigorate Halo as a brand, I could potentially maybe see them dropping like some sort of Halo tease. If they were going to spend that kind of money, it would probably be for something down the road, like a game that's coming in the future. So that way they could kind of phrase it like, hey, Halo's coming. You can play it on the Series X or your phone or whatever. But outside of that, Super Bowl spots are insane. The logistics of Super Bowl spots are so crazy.
They sure are. They sure are.
Another super chat from Gunstar. Best show so far. Rand needs to be a regular. Great topics and insights. That's nice. Yeah, it's.
You want me to do 2 shows a week?
2 shows a week? Dang, I know. They're trying
Well, you don't even really do the show every week, do you?
Mostly, yeah. I've had some like surgeries and other stuff recently, so I've had to skip some weeks, but ideally it's every week. But you know, got a metal plate in my shoulder, all that fun stuff. I've had to have a couple surgeries on that. So yeah, I've been delayed, but mostly it's every week. That's the ideal cadence here. But we got people petitioning for me to be on RDX every week. You know, just a hot commodity right now, Rand. But no, I do appreciate you getting on. It's nice to sit down and chat with you, because we haven't really ever done this before. I mean,
you should. You're a huge free agent. I mean, like Dealer should have you on. He should just kick out Zocker and replace you with him, or replace him with you.
He's always getting pooped on.
And
by
the show would be infinitely better, right? You got Miles on there, you know. Yeah, Yeah, but I think this is the first time me and you have actually gotten a chance to actually talk together. I joined the I saw you in a party with Dealer and Colt the other day, so I joined, but you were gone already. So I didn't get to talk to
shoot.
V space Miles space V.
Exactly, the legend on Xbox. Yeah, no, it's weird that we've never really had a chance to fully kind of like talk like this. So it's cool. I mean, that's kind of sitting down with Colt on Xbox Chaturdays like a little while back was like the first time that we had like a long one-on-one conversation. And now I hit him up and he hits me up on like Xbox Party Chat regularly. So it's kind of cool to, you know.
You're missing these super chats. Someone's Tim Chimney is devastated you didn't read out his super chat, man.
Oh, Tim Chimney. Oh my good. I'm sorry. I apologized. Did not mean to skip that. Tim Chimney, super chat hype. Let's go. I wondered why I suddenly wanted pasta and realized it's because of that Rand al tomato sauce. Damn. So, Rand, how do you feel about the tomato meme? You hate it?
I don't know what to make of it. I mean, like, I don't hate it, but like, where did it come from? Jez literally just made it up, and it kind of just caught on.
It blew up. I don't know why. I just saw him doing a Twitter poll where it was like, "Is Rand an insider, a fraud, or a tomato? Were those the three choices?"
Something like that, yeah.
And then tomato just won by a landslide, and now it's just a ridiculous meme that no matter where I am, Xbox related, whether it's Twitter, whether it's on someone's like podcast live stream, someone is talking about tomatoes, and I'm just like, God damn it. This tomato meme has permeated every facet of Xbox. So you should be happy that I guess your legacy forever in the Xbox world will be Rand al tomato.
Rand al tomato. Thank you very much, Jez. Someone
Jez,
to be proud of.
The meme king who just
it's funny when I told Jez I was doing the show, Jez was like, "Oh, maybe I'll jump in." But where's Jez? He's nowhere.
Yeah, Jez, he's got to talk to me, all right? He's got to filter through me, all right? He can't just show up when he feels like it, all right? All right, Jez, if you're listening still, you don't get to just decide what Saturdays you just randomly pop in, okay? Super chat from Hannah Lay. Bring back Blinks, the Time Sweeper. Also, really glad to catch you live, Rand al Thor 19. Blinks. I have a soft spot for Blinks. It's a weird, obscure game from an era that was really weird and obscure. Voodoo Vince, Blinks, the Time Sweeper. A lot of really weird, cool games. We all know Jeff Keighley's a big Blinks fan, probably somewhat ironically, but maybe legitimately. Would you like to see Blinks come back in any capacity?
No, not really. And I'm pretty sure Phil Spencer hates Blinks. So,
wow. Wow.
Yeah, I don't think that's coming back.
I don't think that's coming back either. No, I don't think there would be a lot of hype. Honestly,
there was one category we kind of really haven't mentioned, acquisitions wise, or just what Xbox needs in general. We talked about how they need to beef up their PC developer, and maybe that's why Sega would be a good thing, or maybe Paradox. But also, because really this doesn't fall in line with what probably me or you want. Phil's talked about one of the needs that they do need for their studios and portfolio for Game Pass is more E-rated titles.
Mm-hmm.
So there's always the possibility that Xbox goes out there and maybe acquires an E-rated studio or an E-rated publisher to try to get more kid-friendly content on the service. That's always something that maybe it's not in my forefront of my mind, because like when you're talking about acquisitions like Bethesda, WB Games, Ubisoft, Sega, the sexy ones, right? The hardcore ones,
the
gamer
pumping,
right?
First, gamer focused.
But if you're following the Netflix model, every time I log into Netflix, there's always some kid movie in the top 10. And if you want Game Pass to reach numbers that you think it will and reach 3 billion gamers, well, you're gonna have to throw a bone to that audience. And you look at Roblox and how big Roblox is.
Yeah, Roblox is insane. It's so big, and it consistently stays big. I really don't. Again, I'm not a kid, but I look at that game and I don't understand the appeal at all. But it's huge, and there are millions and millions of people.
So when we talk about like this type of stuff, it's just not in the forefront of my mind to talk about kid-friendly things, even though I know the Xbox himself has said, yeah, we want more kid-friendly stuff. So I think that's another area they probably will address in the future.
Yeah, and
Whether it's through acquisitions or partnerships, I think that will definitely happen.
yeah, and like we talked about, I think Banjo would be a great fit for that kind of niche. But yeah, they understand, like they look at Nintendo and they look at what people are playing and what people are watching on Twitch, and there's a lot of kid-focused games that people are playing in the millions and millions, and Xbox, obviously understands that that's important and that market's important. They have Minecraft, which is huge, and that's a big get for them in that kind of category, but yeah, they really kind of need to expand their offerings there if they want to. Because yeah, you mean, again, we're gonna segue here in a little bit to the climax of this show, which is going to be all about your favorite publisher, your favorite video game company, Nintendo. But Xbox understands the value of Nintendo, unlike Rand al Thor 19, and so they understand what it means to have big family and kid-friendly games. So but with that being said, Rand, I guess we can let's just segue right into it. Let's just get into the sauce. Let's get into the meat of this episode. If you're watching, if you're ready for a little spice, we're going to have an anti-Nintendo intervention for Rand al Thor 19.
You better bring it, Miles. I'm ready for this.
Because Rand has publicly had so many awful takes about Nintendo.
Awful? More like on point.
Rand has just dropped the worst, most just uninformed takes about Nintendo consistently. He's been on record saying that Nintendo is irrelevant. He's been on record saying that
you're trying to say like Nintendo Switch, which has sold almost 80 million consoles, is clearly relevant. But to Rand al Thor 19, Nintendo is irrelevant to me. You always got to you have to say it right, Miles.
No,
because
we're going definitive.
They're irrelevant to me. I don't care what Nintendo does. They're irrelevant to me.
In my opinion, no. Rand, okay, so for everyone who doesn't know, I think most people know, because I assume a lot of people here. You said we wouldn't hit 100, Rand. We got 229. People care about
I didn't say we wouldn't hit 100.
Yeah, you're like, nobody cares about Rand. And I was like, okay, maybe you're right. Maybe people don't care about Rand. But I do. Yeah. I do. Let's give people a breakdown of your overall thoughts on Nintendo. Just to recap where we are, how we got to this point.
Thoughts.
Like what is wrong with Nintendo in your eyes? That's what I want to know right here, right now.
They're boring.
Boring. Wow. Poetry, Rand. Such a well thought out opinion.
I mean, I just don't have a lot. I think a lot of people look at a lot of Nintendo with these rose tinted glasses of like, this is what, Nintendo's all about. What I was when I was 10 years old and I was playing Mario and I was doing track and field with my sister and my best friend. And they have these such great memories of the first time they played Metroid or Zelda. And I'll be honest, like I was in that camp too back in the NES, and I have those memories of playing Punch-Out for the first time and beating Mike Tyson, right? Or playing Super Mario Brothers 1, Super Mario Brothers 3, Contra. Like some of those are like my favorite memories to look back on when I was a kid playing those titles, right? But then I think where I kind of veer off from everybody else was after the NES, I didn't have another Nintendo system till the GameCube. So I went, and this is, I know people will be like, well, you don't want Sega or whatever, but like I ended up being a Sega kid. After the NES, I got a Genesis and a Sega CD.
It's all starting to make sense.
And a Sega 32X and a Sega Saturn and all that stuff. And then after Sega, I went into PlayStation. Like I was a big PlayStation fan. PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2. And then finally I bought a GameCube because, I was working for myself at that point. I was like, I want to get a GameCube. And it was like $99. So I missed out on Super Nintendo. I've never played a Super Nintendo game in my life. So I missed out on Super Metroid and all those other
never
titles.
Played a single. Do you have a Switch currently?
I do have a Switch, yes.
And you haven't even gone back and like checked out the SNES online?
Nope. I don't remember last time I even turned on the Switch, right? So So I've never played a Super Nintendo game. I didn't own a 64, even though my friends did. So we would go over and we would play WCW versus NWO Revenge and WWF No Mercy on the 64. So I never, but that was really the only thing we played. And I mean, I did dabble in some GoldenEye, but never played Ocarina of Time or any of the N64 games. So when I got a GameCube, I played Metroid Prime and Metroid Prime 2. Love those two. I love Metroid Prime. I love Metroid as a franchise. I played Legend of Zelda Wind Waker, which was the second Zelda game I ever played. But that was realistically it. Like Mario Kart Double Dash and stuff like that. They're always fun. So I just don't have that love of these Nintendo franchises that everybody else has. So when people talk lovingly about Mario and they like, oh, I can't wait for the next Mario or the 100th Mario, like it just doesn't resonate with me. Or when they talk about, oh my God, Breath of the Wild 2, I don't care about Zelda or Link as a franchise. So a lot of what people love about Nintendo, I just don't share that enthusiasm for it. So it's all meaningless to me. You know what I mean? When people talk about those things, because even Jez, we were talking about Pokemon in the podcast, like he was like, after the podcast was over, he was needling me, asking me all these questions about why I don't like Pokemon, right? Why aren't you into Pokemon? And he was trying to figure out, like, he's like, were anybody in your kids in your school like really big into Pokemon? I'm like, no, dude. I'm like, by the time Pokemon was big here, I was out of school. And because he went and looked, and I was like, I think I was 19 when Pokemon came to the West. I was done with school at that point. You know what I mean? So like, no, like Pokemon was never a part of my life. It was never a part of anybody who I was friends with life. So like, why would I care about Pokemon? So it's just, I don't know. It's just the circumstances I grew up in, moving from Nintendo to Genesis, missing out on Pokemon and all that stuff, being more into PlayStation and then eventually really into Xbox and Halo, that Nintendo just doesn't mean anything to me. And I'm not saying Nintendo doesn't deserve the praise that they do. The video game industry is almost built on the back of Nintendo for the most part. And I don't begrudge anybody for liking Nintendo and their properties, because clearly they're a staple of the video game industry. And like some of this I'll play up, right? With me saying Nintendo's irrelevant and all that stuff. That's just all for like good podcasting and getting people listening to, like, get them to type comments and stuff like that. But like, just because I don't like Nintendo, like I don't begrudge anybody else's love for Nintendo. It just they just don't mean anything to me. And if that, that doesn't, I don't want to like hurt anybody by that, right? Because I know a lot of people, when they get on Twitter and they say, Xbox sucks, like they expect that person to like get offended. But I don't care when people say Xbox sucks. Like it doesn't, like your opinion doesn't really, like doesn't impact my own. Like I'm comfortable enough with what I think about certain things, not to be upset with what you think about certain things. You know what I mean? So yeah, I just don't care about Nintendo, man. I'm sorry, I just don't.
I'm glad we went on this journey. You went, you went a little soft on me. I feel like your takes are a little subdued, a little more, I guess, objective now that you're kind of put on the spot about it. So I appreciate that. Because there is a contingent of people in the Xbox community who legitimately feel that Nintendo as a whole does not currently have value in the gaming space. And I'm not saying that's you.
They clearly do.
I'm just saying I've seen people in this show on other people's podcasts, as soon as Nintendo is brought up, people are saying that Nintendo doesn't do anything. Nintendo's irrelevant. Nintendo doesn't have value in the gaming space. And those are the kind of comments that I have huge issue with, because yes, part of people's love for Nintendo is the nostalgia. I have nostalgia for Nintendo. Not going to deny that at all. Super Nintendo was my very first console. Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past was the very first video game I ever owned and played. So I have a ton of nostalgia. That being said, my kind of journey in console history started with Super Nintendo, and then it went to PlayStation 1, and then it went to Xbox. So I've kind of been all over the place when it comes to like I've almost always owned every console. So I've been able to kind of see what everyone's doing throughout my life and kind of see how they've grown and changed. So a lot of it, sure, you can say nostalgia drives a lot of it. But that being said, Nintendo is still currently putting out games that are genre defying. Breath of the Wild. You can talk to so many developers right now who are actively making big budget, huge games for PlayStation and Xbox. And they look at Breath of the Wild's design decisions. They look at what Nintendo did with Breath of the Wild as a driver for these big games that people wouldn't typically associate with a Nintendo game. So you can say that Nintendo is only nostalgia, but that is just not the case. You look at Super Mario Odyssey. A lot of people said that 3D platformers are tired. They can't be done. They've done basically everything you can do with the genre, and it's just nostalgia is the only reason people like them. And then Nintendo puts out Super Mario Odyssey, which is one of the best, if not, I would go as far as to say that Super Mario Odyssey is potentially the best 3D platformer ever made. Like decades after the genre has been done to death, Nintendo comes out with Super Mario Odyssey and completely redefines everything. So those are two prime examples. The Pokemon thing is really interesting. That's like a fascinating social study because the cult of Pokemon was a super distinct era. And so to your point, you were slightly older. Like at 19, you're a teenager. Pokemon's not cool to you. You don't really care about Pokemon. If you're in the age group of like say 8 to 15, maybe 14 in that pocket when Pokemon comes out, everyone is obsessed with Pokemon. Everyone's watching the show, everyone's collecting the cards, everyone's playing the games. So that's always something I ask when someone says they don't like Pokemon is, did you play it as a kid? Because a lot of what
my first Pokemon was the one that Jez made me play.
Sword and Shield.
Pokemon, yeah.
Which it's a great place to start, honestly, if you've never played a Pokemon. But that's kind of, if you've never played Pokemon and you didn't have that kind of experience with the franchise growing up, there is legitimately like this kind of disconnect. And it's really fascinating. Like I was looking at Jez's poll to see like what is the age group of people who like Pokemon. And as it
was literally based off of our conversation we were having. Because he was trying to figure out when it came to the US and why I didn't like it. And when it came, I was done with school. Like I was out of high school, and I was out of I stopped going to college after a year, even though I eventually went back. And none of my friends, like nobody around me played it. So like, because Jez was talking about how like it was such a huge commodity at his school, like people would trade cards and all that stuff and play the games. And there is some truth to that, like because I remember back in grammar school, a lot of like I do recall people being like in the camps of Nintendo and Sega and who do you got and things like that. But like yeah, by the time Pokemon was a thing, I was already out of that social group of school where like it was just me and my close friends, and none of us were all Nintendo fans. So like Pokemon was just one of those things that was just just didn't make it. I didn't even know it existed essentially because I wasn't around that. Yeah, so it definitely is more than likely because of my age. I just ended up being too old, and because I wasn't in school anymore and didn't talk to people who played that, then it's probably one of the reasons why Pokemon means nothing to me.
Means that hurts to hear, but I get it. I do get it because I have a friend, one of my really close friends that I've like gone to college with and been in a band with and have known for 15 years now at this point. He's like 3 years older than me, and he just missed Pokemon. Like he was a couple grades ahead of when everyone else was playing Pokemon. So his younger brother, which is my age, was obsessed with Pokemon. Played the shit out of Pokemon. He just missed that window by a couple years, so he didn't play it. He doesn't get it. I bought him Sword and Shield. Doesn't get it. So there is this weird disconnect, and there is this weird kind of window of time where Pokemon was just the cultural phenomenon, and that has kind of permeated and spread to different groups. There are young people who like Pokemon, play it, but yeah, it's one of those cultural experiences that I don't know if our generation or any generation will kind of ever see in that capacity again. Pokemon was such an insane phenomenon, and it's yeah, that conversation you had with Jez and the Twitter poll is really interesting. And it's really interesting to hear that you were a Nintendo kid at one point. Like a lot of people I talk to who don't like Nintendo are younger. Like they never played the Super Nintendo or NES or Nintendo 64. But you played Nintendo. You played Nintendo games early
Yeah,
on.
I mean, I had an NES. I mean, I think the Atari was my first system, but I don't really have any memories of that. I still remember my birthday when I got an NES, and I still remember the first time I saw a Nintendo game. I remember my family had we used to go up to Wisconsin every single summer. We had like a cottage up there that we would go to, and I remember going up there, and one of my friends at the time who lived up there, he was sick, so I went into his room and he was playing Punch Out, and it was the most glorious thing had ever seen. You know, seeing Punch Out for the first time, and then playing it, and it just blew my mind. Like those are some of those moments. Nintendo's has some of those moments where like you see things and it just blows your mind. The first time I played Punch Out blew my mind. I thought it was the coolest thing ever, and I asked my parents for it, and I got an NES, whatever summer that was. I forget what summer, but yeah, I mean, I had like 150 Nintendo games because my grandparents would buy me like every Christmas. I would get like 40 Nintendo games or 30 Nintendo games, and it would drive my parents crazy, especially my mom, because she would tell my grandma no, and then like you know. She'd come with the presents, and like you think it would be a closed box, but inside is literally like 8 video games, right? And
Just
it's like,
sneaking in
it is
video
so
games.
amazing. And then I'd look at my mom, and she's like giving my grandma like a death stare, like I told you no, right? But yeah, I had a ton of NES games, and I and even like the next time my mind was blown was the first time I saw Mario 64. I remember seeing it going up to a Blockbuster, and they had it on a TV, and you could play it because they had the 64 hooked up to it. And I'm like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. I couldn't imagine that. You know, like when you think about moments that blow your mind in video games, the first time you see Mario 64, because it was just like, this is possible. You know what I mean? And I remember being blown away when I saw Grand Theft Auto 3, but that has nothing to do with Nintendo. But yeah, I mean, Nintendo is probably very much a factor in me being a gamer in my life. It's just that it didn't. It kind of was the reason I got into it, but then after that, it was they don't really hold any relevance to me because I went on a different path, became a Sega kid, then a PlayStation, fan, then an Xbox fan, and now I'm more of a gaming fan with a very strong preference for Xbox. But even though like I do like PlayStation stuff. Like I have a PS5 to play, whatever exclusives they put out in the next 6 years, 7 years for the PS5. Um, I have a Switch, but like there's nothing that compels me to turn it on or play it. And there's nothing on the horizon that makes me like, yeah, my investment in the Switch was good. Like I think the Switch is probably the worst console I've ever bought. It was basically a waste of $300. I might as well have just burned the money.
Wow.
For
Okay.
as how much
I was gonna say
I've used it.
we were
You know what I
making
mean?
some good ground here, and I was feeling a connection, and then again you
I'm
come.
just saying for the amount of money I spent and for the amount of time I've played my Switch, it was a poor investment.
Okay, that's fair. Again, I don't no not everyone has to love Nintendo. I'm not in that camp. Um, but yeah, it's fascinating to kind of hear your history, and you talk about those moments where you see a game for the first time that completely changes what you think video games can be. And I think for a lot of us, that's why we fall in love with gaming, and that's why we spend so much time like praising and talking about what gaming can do. Because to your point, when I first saw Mario 64, I was completely blown away by how far we had come from the Super Nintendo to the 64 and what a video game can look like, what it can be, the freedom that it can offer. And I had never experienced anything like Mario 64. And there's so many moments like that that we can point to throughout our lives where you just have that experience that makes you say, wow, this is the power and this is the impact that video games can have on someone. And so yeah, that's why video games to me are special. Obviously, that's why video games to you are special. And yeah, as much as I prefer Xbox, I don't ever write off a single platform because I understand the value that everyone brings to the industry. And nobody goes into video games for cynical reasons. Everyone who is making video games does it because they love it. Publishers, and once you get money involved, there can be sinister reasons for it. But when it comes to making games, people do it because they love it, and that's what makes this industry so fun. Speaking of love, Snowbike Mike coming in with just a beautiful comment that says, "Loving the show today, guys. You both rule, and I love your content and just you." See, yeah, this has been a very wholesome, positive episode. I know I kind of hyped it up as...
That's because Snowbike Mike is amazing, and he runs the incredible Xcast over at Kinda Funny.
Exactly. Shout out to Snowbike Mike, the ultimate Xbox hype man, who's actually managed to have Kinda Funny see the error of their ways and have a dedicated Xbox show, which I was so stoked to see. Snowbike Mike has been awesome. He's been guesting with Kinda Funny for a while. I remember seeing him on the show years ago as a guest host. So it's been super cool to watch his growth within Kinda Funny, and now be the host of the dedicated Xbox show on Kinda Funny is awesome. So yeah, Xbox is awesome. There was a period of time where there was a lot of cynicism around the brand, so it's been really cool to see more people.
There still is a lot of cynicism around the brand when you talk to certain people, though.
I know. I know. And I've talked about this on a previous episode, but what Xbox did with the Xbox One launch, for some people in some facets, in some ways, can never be repaired. They have completely eroded trust with a certain group of people, and because of that, there will always be a contingent of negative press around that. They took the goodwill of the 360 launch, and then they completely devastated that with the Xbox One. And when you do that to someone, they're just psychologically... there's just a personality sect that will not be able to look past that. So everything that Xbox does moving forward for some people is going to be under this microscope of what is the reasoning for this. And they're going to try to find a sinister reason for Xbox and Microsoft to do this. And it sucks that that's kind of the state of the brand, but unfortunately the management and leadership group at that time, they did it to themselves. The way that the rollout of that was very against its player base. And again, like I said, I don't know if they'll ever fully recover from that. Obviously, Xbox is on a big kind of uptick in popularity and kind of reception. But yeah, for some people, they have permanently damaged that relationship.
Very much so.
And it sucks. I remember when I first got my original Xbox, how much I loved it, playing Hunter the Reckoning and Halo all day, every day. 360, absolutely loved it. Xbox One, bought it at launch, and objectively, it was kind of okay. It was not the same excitement as the previous two generations, and then it was followed by years and years of kind of mid-tier releases and mismanagement, and yeah, they lost pretty much all momentum with Xbox One and had to, mid-gen of last year, rebuild the entire Xbox brand. So I'm glad that they put Phil Spencer in and they put a team together who actually cares about Xbox and what the legacy of Xbox was, and are trying to correct that, because it was it was looking pretty bad. Looking pretty bad, Rand.
I mean, for a time there it was, but
but it's looking good.
Looking much better.
Yeah, there's a lot of like great energy around the brand right now, and it's super exciting. What was I going to say? Oh yeah, I mean, even with the mediums, overall kind of like middling reception on Metacritic, and we can get in this if you want, but I think Metacritic.
I mean, I think the review scores. I don't see an issue with the game being a 70. I don't really think a 70 is a bad score either.
No, I think Metacritic is one of the most reductive things to happen to the video game industry. Inherently, it's a cool tool. It's a useful way to get a quick glimpse at a game, but the way that people weaponize it and use it, they basically reduce the entire value of this game to a single number, and it's so reductive to any sort of constructive conversation, because you have those obnoxious people on Twitter who just screenshot the Metacritic
Of
score
course.
of the game you're
But
talking about with a
you
Metacritic
just
score of a game
said it.
that's better.
You just said it. It's obnoxious people on Twitter, toxic trolls. You know, someone who I mean, you've seen it recently. You've seen the hypocrites on both sides, the ones who trash Medium for being a 71, but then we're calling Destruction All Stars, which is a 65, great and awesome, right? Or vice versa, the people that were holding up, the Medium as a great game, but then trashing,
Destruction All Stars.
a game is more than a number. Yeah, like a game is more than a number. But as you mentioned, they're just a group of people on obnoxious trolls on Twitter who do this because they have nothing else better to do with their lives. They're just pathetic trolls, and it's usually just best to ignore that. The Medium has good. I mean, I talked about it on the show with Jez, but Medium has very strong moments. It has stuff it does really well, but then and it has some stuff that it does very poorly. And I think the scores of around a 70 are reflective of what I think of the title itself. Um, but that's just the way it is. It's not just Metacritic. It's like Rotten Tomatoes. The basically the worth of a movie reflected in an aggregation of critics giving it a score. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah. Again, I understand the convenience of it. I understand that the average person does not want to read a bunch of reviews. I get that. It's a huge time commitment. But again, it's just the way it's used is just so reductive. Like a big push for me and like this show and what I do in the industry is like putting a face to developers, like sitting down with developers, sitting down with the people who make these games, and just trying to remind people that games are made by people who love games. That's really what it comes down to. And when you take a Metacritic score, a single number, you basically eliminate the work and the love and the passion of hundreds of people. And you try to completely discredit what they spent years of their life doing by saying, oh, it's a 72. It's not that good. It's not worth your time. And so it's, again, I don't know. I'm an empath, so it's hard for me to kind of separate myself from the people making those games. But I really can't stand how just, I guess, toxic a lot of people are on social media when it comes to scores specifically. Scores are a necessary evil in the video game industry, but I think Metacritic is awful, and I hate it. And when people,
what about OpenCritic?
they're the same. It's the same idea. The same. It's just an aggregate of scores.
Very true. Very true.
So
I mean, you like the Medium. I mean, I know you also thought the Medium definitely had some flaws, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So I mean, I've talked about this. I've talked about this in length to a lot of people on Twitter. But the Medium is not a perfect game by any means. But what the context of the Medium's development is, this is an independent horror game made by a small group of people and is independently published. So that needs to be factored in when you're looking at this game. You can't compare this to The Last of Us 2. You can't compare this to Gears of War 5. This is a much smaller game. It's an independent game. And for an independent horror game to come out and have a 70 Metacritic average, in my eyes, that's a huge success. Because horror in general is a niche genre. So for a lot of people, that automatically takes away the appeal. And then the fact that it's an independent game as well means that, like the animations are janky. The budget of the production isn't super top tier. So yeah, you can't just wildly compare that to anything. And that's what people on Metacritic do, is they look at the number with no context. It's just a single ugly number by itself. And then they try to use that as a tool to compare it to something else with no context and no sort of correlation between the two.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I mean, it's too bad I didn't get to hear you go off on Jez about it, because Jez really seemed like he didn't like it. It was always boring. But Jez doesn't like Halo, and he thinks Gears of War is the pinnacle of gaming. Well, Pokemon, but so Jez's opinions really don't mean very much.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I was giving Jez a hard time on your guys' show yesterday.
He gave Cyberpunk a 10 out of 10. Am I right?
That's a heated. I get harassed on Twitter because Jez gave Cyberpunk a 10 out of 10. Is how bad that situation was.
He'll be like, I gave it a 5 out of 5, and it doesn't mean it's perfect.
Yeah, it's again reviews. It's an opinion at the end of the day, and people, I don't know, get a little out of control with it. But yeah, if you message me on Twitter saying that Windows Central gave Cyberpunk a 10 and that's why my opinion doesn't count, then I'm just gonna block you. If that's really how you feel, then we're not gonna have a conversation ever in any constructive way. So bye, you're gone. I don't have time for it in my life. All right, like you said, Rand. Sometimes you just gotta ignore the toxic people on Twitter, and sometimes that involves just blocking them or muting them.
That is very much the truth.
So we're going to open up the last 10 minutes or so of this show to any questions you guys have. In the meantime, Rand, everyone here knows you already, but give people a breakdown of the man with the million. Where can they find you? Where can they harass you? Where can they send you hate mail about your Nintendo takes?
Yeah, I mean, it was awesome being on here with you, Miles. You're amazing, and I hope you replace soccer and RDX. If you wanna check out the content I make, it's on youtube.com/Rand al Thor 19, where I make videos mostly about Xbox, and then me and Jez Corden. We do a podcast usually every Friday, the Xbox 2, where we talk about what we've been playing and what's been going on in the video game industry and how it kind of all purports to the Xbox view of things. You can find all my social information there. My Twitter, I usually don't shout out my Twitter because it's kind of hard. Like it's Rand_AL_Thor_19 because they don't allow spaces on Twitter. And so it's just my username just with underscores. And I was a little bit disappointed that your gamer tag wasn't just Miles. My gamer tag, I'm Rand al Thor 19 on Twitter, on YouTube, and that's even my gamer tag, man. You know what I'm saying? Like I was a gamer tag first before I even had a YouTube account. It's Rand al Thor 19 everywhere. But on PlayStation, someone took Rand al Thor 19. So I'm Rand_AL_Thor 19 because someone had taken it, pretending to be me, apparently. So
I got to get Jez's contact for getting just Jez as his gamer tag. I gotta find out how to get just Miles as my gamer tag. Not Miles hashtag blah blah blah. Once I have just Miles as my gamer tag, I will know I've made it in the industry. But yeah, no, Rand, it's been awesome having a chance to sit down and talk with you. How long have you been doing YouTube now? Because I remember watching your videos years ago before I was really making content. But I
started right around when Forza Horizon 3 came out. So end of 2016 is when I actually started first making videos. I started putting out more like regular content maybe like halfway to 2017 or 2018. And it's kind of just been doing that since. Taking it a little bit more seriously, I guess, or not seriously, depending on how you look at it. And it's fun. It's fun making videos. It's fun seeing, people enjoy it, and I always just kind of laugh, say nobody cares when I know that's not true, even though when people say they do it, it's just so awkward for me. Like when I talk to people and they be like, I'm a big fan. I don't know how to respond to that because I'm just a regular guy. As Dealer says, I'm just an asshole with the microphone. You know what I mean?
That's the beauty of YouTube
I'm just a regular guy, just like everybody else. I just happen to play a lot of video games and got a million gamer score, I guess. Got invited by Phil Spencer to E3, break a million gamer score on stage. Only person ever to do that in the history of the entire world. In the history of the entire world, Miles, I will have been the only person to break a million gamer score at E3. Isn't that crazy?
That is crazy. What happens if
the only person in history?
I do it too. What if I talk to Phil and he lets me do it?
Yeah, well, there's no more E3, so that seems to be.
That's yeah. I mean, that is an awesome moment. Because was this before you were making content? Or was this during?
Yeah, I mean, so I was on podcast, the Xbox Roundtable, and I had met Phil, and we played a whole bunch of games together. And one day he kind of mentioned, "Hey, wouldn't it be cool if we had you on stage and you broke a million gamer score?" And I kind of followed him up about it, and they talked to his teams, and they thought it would be a good moment. And yeah, I was invited out to E3, and we did it. I broke a million gamer score with Ori, the Will of the Wisp Definitive Edition, for beating the campaign. Forget the achievement name is called oh man, what's the name of the achievement? Hold on one second. We got to find this out because I think it's called like the Journey's End or something, or
Just a very fitting
something like that.
achievement to the climax of Rand's 1 million gamer score journey.
Because achievements have kind of gone down the man, like it is a cluster right now with how easy it is to get gamer score.
Yeah, that's actually we got a question from V Simco we can touch on here in a sec about achievements specifically.
Okay. I mean, we could talk about like, the Journey Ends. That was the name of the achievement. So the Journey Ends in the Definitive Edition for completing the game was the achievement I broke 1 million with. It was very appropriate because they asked me what games I wanted to do, and it was like, well, I could do Halo, like Halo 5. I could do Ori, and it was supposed to do Halo 5. It was supposed to, like, I had prepped it where I needed 100 points, and I was supposed to just do like this little part in Halo 5, like level 3 where you're just walking, and it would pop the achievement for beating the game on Legendary, right? Because originally it was supposed to be planned to do live. And then when I got there that day, they had changed everything up. No longer was it going to be live. I was going to break it live. They wanted to pre-record it, and no longer did they want to do Halo. They wanted to do Ori.
Okay.
So I had to do the last section of Ori, which if anybody's played Ori, the last section is kind of difficult. So it took me a little bit to beat it. And then with the interview segment where they introduced me with Phil, there was supposed to be an interview between me and him where, he would ask questions I'd answer, but then they changed it to where like I wasn't allowed to say anything because it was like when I some people, and I see Gunstar saying like, "Oh, that video is so awkward," but like, it was one of those things where like, okay, get up there, don't say anything to Phil, don't look at Phil, like just kind of. And I was so like, it was just one of those things where I was just like, okay, I guess. I didn't know really what to do, so yeah, so I wasn't mic'd up and I couldn't say anything, so it wasn't like I could say, thank you or whatever. It was just, I don't know. It was just
had to stand there and look pretty. It's
the video's actually on my YouTube channel. If you search for it, it's there. It's just, it was just total. I was just like, all right, I was expecting this thing, and then it ended up being not, and I was just kind of like, it was just so weird. But like, it was amazing because it was like, here I was, part of Xbox, right next to Phil, and there was Jessica Chobot, and I still think about that moment and how amazing it was. And I talked to Phil, like I talk to him in DMs all the time. I don't really bother him that much on Xbox. He's playing Destiny, but whenever here and there, I'll jump in his party and talk to him, play games with him or whatever. But like, Phil means what he's done for me personally. It means a lot. So like, I may be a little bit biased when it comes to what I think Phil has done for Xbox because he's done a lot for me personally. So it's just I guess you say I have a soft spot for Phil Spencer and what he's done for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, if you guys haven't watched the video, check it out. It's, like Gunstar said, it's a little bit awkward, but it is such a cool moment in Xbox history, especially like in this kind of like community with, you and Jez have the podcast, but it's this cool moment for like you as Rand al Thor, but as like Xbox gamers as a whole, like having that connection with the head of Xbox and having that moment. And yeah, you hear stories all the time about Phil playing Xbox with people, and he's pretty open. So you don't really hear those same kind of stories about any of the heads of PlayStation, which I'm not saying they're bad guys. I'm just saying like it's really cool that the people within Xbox actively want that connection with the audience and with the community. And it's stories like this are huge and such a cool like testament to the Xbox brand. And it's, again, if you haven't watched it, it's a very wholesome, fun video. All right, so sorry, the question that vSimco had regarding achievements. A lot of people are talking about improving the achievement system. What do you think is the greatest current problem with it?
The greatest current problem with the achievement system, outside of like the fact that they haven't added completions or stuff like that, if we take that as a separate thing, and I've had conversations with people at Xbox about this, is they basically allowed anybody to self-publish a game, right? That variety at Xbox. But then there started to be publishers who came up who would release these games that aren't good whatsoever, but make the achievements ridiculously easy. So you would buy this game for cheap for $5 and have all the 1,000 gamer score within 10 minutes.
Yep.
They're called Rand al Thor games. They were kind of the first to do it, but then more publishers started to see that, and there is a dedicated audience, a very, very small, but dedicated audience that will buy those games. They're cheap games to make, so they're cheap to buy, and it's really just compounded since 2017, where it was like, okay, you have the ACA Neo Geo games, some of them are easy, and then these Radalaika games started to come out every week, and oh man, the achievement system's getting bad because those are super easy, and now you have like a publisher, Zilton, who's out there who they're really exploiting the system to where because Xbox allows like you to add more gamer score after a certain amount of time, like every 6 months. So they put out these super easy trash games, and I have no qualms about saying trash because they are trash. Like you're talking games that are like that shouldn't really be on the Xbox like platform. These are like games made by students that essentially what they're like they're horrible games, right? And what he's essentially doing is, so you have 1,000 gamer score, and then 6 months later, he'll add another 1,000 for free for 2,000. And then 6 months later, you have another 1,000, add on to 3. And they do that for all their games. So recently, a lot of these games were updated to like 3,000 gamer score, and you can get it within 10 minutes. All these achievements. So it's just pop it. It makes the gamer score system more like it already was worthless to a certain extent. Like I know gamer score doesn't mean anything, and I've always said that. But now you have these publishers that basically make a mockery of the whole thing, where you're not even really buying a game anymore because these games are absolutely horrible. You're essentially just giving them $5 in exchange for 1,000 gamer score. You're essentially just buying gamer score at this point. And when you load up these games and you move like one square, you'll just pop 10 achievements. And like it's pathetic. It's pathetic that one, Xbox hasn't put rules in place to stop this, and they haven't done things to mitigate it. But the achievement system has basically been the same since 2016. They haven't done anything to improve it, and since the years that they've pioneered it. It's one of the few things that Xbox has pioneered where literally the entire video game industry copied it. What were these achievements back in the 360 era? Like, people are like, whoa, what is this? This is kind of cool. It got to the point that not only did PlayStation copy them, Steam copied them too. Literally every platform on Earth has copied achievements in some manner, and Xbox was the first to do it. But they haven't really gone above and beyond. Like, people have wanted completions, which is basically like a platinum for an on Xbox, and Microsoft, they haven't delivered that. They wanted Microsoft to sort out, the DLC list or whatever, and they haven't done that. And I know there's always been moments where they've thought about doing that, but for whatever reason, they just don't. And the last time we got any significant update to achievements was when they added rare achievements, which are great, and achievement rarity to see how many people have it. But there's more they need to do. But first, they need to curb this bull of getting these publishers of these crappy games and just letting them just run rampant over the achievement rules. So, this guy can just acquire these. So this publisher just can put out these student projects for $5 and essentially make the achievement system look like a bigger joke than it has been. Like it's horrible the way it's currently set up.
It's
like
the numbers
they
are
honestly
so bloated.
They need to fix it. It needs to be fixed. Like, and I've had conversations with people about it, and maybe there will be some more restrictions on things. But like the fact that you can buy these awful games and get so much gamer source so quickly just makes the whole system meaningless. Have even less meaning than it already did. And But a lot of people, even listening to this, won't even know what I'm talking about. They don't never heard of Zilton or Radalaika or any of these games that I'm mentioning. It's only really if you're like super into achievements, like I used to be. Like I mean, when I broke a million gamer score, I was the 5th person in the world to do it. Like I was in the gamer score, and I completely just fell out of it. Basically, for a lot of these reasons, like it didn't. Like after a million, what do you do? Do you go for 2 million? Then 3 million, then 4 million? Are you always just chasing some random number just because? It wasn't really interesting to me, and I didn't want to spend all my time playing all this garbage because a lot of these games are just garbage. And people make fun of me for playing like Barbie's Puppy Rescue and stuff 360, which it is true. I played my fair share of horrible games on the 360. I played the Hannah Montanas and I played the Barbie Puppy Rescue because I was into Gamerscore and I had a goal in mind. I wanted to hit 1 million, and Gamerscore wasn't as plentiful as it was now. As like back then, you had to play any easy game that came out, and an easy game was like, oh man, here's a game, Cloudy with the Chance of Meatballs, based on the movie. Like those games were like, oh, this is only going to take me 6 hours for 1,000. Now you have games that literally take 10 million to 10 minutes to get 30,000. Like there's a big difference between what it was and what it currently is. But you'd only really care if you're really into that scene. And yeah. I know I can get passionate about it because I used to really care deeply about it, but not anymore.
Yeah, like you said, when Xbox Achievements came out on 360, that was the huge groundbreaking moment for Xbox and the way we interact with online, like there wasn't a word for it before, but gaming achievements. Like there wasn't a system like that in place to kind of showcase what you've done in a game. So I want them to get back to a point where that means something. Because now when I look at the numbers, when I boot up a game and it has like 5,000 potential gamer score, I don't care. There's no way in hell I'm going to commit to try to get 5,000 gamer score in Smite. And then you have games like Sea of Thieves. I've put 600 hours into Sea of Thieves, and I don't even have half the achievements. It's like there's this huge, and to your point, there's this huge disconnect between that and then a game you can play for 10 minutes and get 1,000 gamer score. So they need to figure out some way, and they've acknowledged that they're aware that people are looking for a more meaningful way to engage with achievements. But what are they going to do? How would they even fix it? What would that look like to you? I did a video on this recently, where I talked about things that PlayStation and Steam have that Xbox doesn't, and one of the things I touched on was meaningful achievements. Like with PlayStation, you have the platinum trophies. So it's
but even the platinum trophies isn't essentially meaningful because a lot of these games I'm talking about are also on PlayStation.
Exactly. It's not that different. Instead of a number, instead of 1,000, it's just the platinum trophy. So it's similar.
But Xbox does need to do that. They need to just, people have wanted that where they want some sort of like a badge or something that says, hey, you got all the achievements of the game. Good job. Here it is.
Mm-hmm.
And people have talked about and wanted that for a while, but for whatever reason, Xbox doesn't implement it. I mean, there are things. I mean, the trouble we were having with the Xbox app on PC. There's a lot of things Xbox needs to do better in. Like it's in regards to like even your video that you made. I think you even said you wanted playtime like Steam has, right?
And fun fact, they added that like last week. If you're part of the Delta Insider, I was going through just at the end of a session with some friends, like looking at my achievement list, and I was like, wait a second, because one of the things I specifically complain about in the video is I don't know what my playtime in Sea of Thieves is on console. And so I was going through achievements on Sea of Thieves because we had just got done playing, and I saw playtime, and I was like, what? They added playtime to Sea of Thieves? And so I looked at that, and then I went down like 30 games on my list, and all 30 of them had playtimes when they didn't previously. So,
well, it's not that they didn't. They always did. It's just that whether or not
they weren't tracked. I mean, they weren't like shown.
No, it was always tracked.
That's what I mean, because it's not starting over. So when I booted up Sea of Thieves, it said I had 600 hours. And all the games I'd played previously, outside of Dark Souls 2, there were a few weird omissions where it had the playtime box, like that was added, but it just said I had 0 hours on it.
Yeah, because the Sea of Thieves never had time on it before, right?
Correct. So that one, funny enough, was added. or will be rolled out officially, it seems like. Which that one is simple. I don't understand why that wasn't a thing before, but baby steps, Rand. Baby Xbox is great in a lot of ways, and Xbox is innovative in a lot of ways, but they're also behind the curve in as many.
That is very true.
Cool. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up here. Huge shout out to everyone who watched. If you're new to the channel, feel free to like and subscribe. Make sure you hit up Rand on Twitter. Check out his channel as well. And yeah, we will catch you, or I'll catch you next Saturday. And in the meantime, have a blessed weekend, y'all.
Later.
Bye, everybody.